So you want to try out a POTA activation for the first time? Not sure what you need to bring? Stay tuned. I'm going to cover that. Today I'm going to cover what equipment you need to bring to do a POTA activation. There's no need to bring multiple totes of equipment to do a simple park activation. I started out this way, and after a couple of park activations and a ton of YouTube research, I decided it was time to scale down my equipment. It took me some time, but now all of my POTA equipment fits in this backpack. This backpack is actually a little bit too big for what I need to bring. It's just a simple 30 to 35 liter 3-day assault pack that I picked up off of Amazon. It has enough room for what I need, along with extra space just in case I want to bring extra water, a cook kit, or a tarp. Before we jump into the bag, let's go over the must-haves. You will need a radio, a power source, an antenna, coax to connect to your antenna, a way to log your contacts, and you will also need your POTA park number. Let's start with the radio. Do you want to run QRP or do you want to run QRO? QRP is typically 10 watts or less, and QRO is typically referred to as 100 watts. A quick tip is, if you're a little mic shy, run QRP because not as many people are going to hear you or respond to you. Another misconception about running QRP is you have to have a QRP radio. That's not necessarily true. You can take a QRO radio, like a yaesu FT891, that is a 100 watt radio, go into the settings and turn it down to 5 or 10 watts. Then you're at QRP. Now let's move on to your power source. Per the POTA rules, the AC mains power can't be used. You can use any type of off-grid power that you want, like batteries, solar, or a generator. The most popular option is battery power. LiFePO4, lithium iron phosphate, is the most popular type of battery to be used with POTA. This type of battery is lightweight, and almost all of the stored power is able to be used, unlike a lead-acid battery, where you can only use 50% of the power, otherwise you risk damaging the battery. Here are a couple of the batteries that I use. The first is a cheap Miady 16 amp hour battery. It fits perfectly in an ammo can for easy transport. Or you can also use this battery to set up a battery box. This battery has more than enough storage capacity to run my 891 at 100 watts for several hours. The second battery is a Bioenno 4.5 amp hour battery. I use this one mainly to run my yaesu FT818ND, but it could run my 891 for an hour or two depending on the radio power level. For example, if I wanted to run my FT891 at, let's say, 20 watts or so, it would probably last a little bit longer. For an antenna, my recommendation is always keep it simple. My go-to antenna is an end-fed half-wave set up for 40 through 10 meters, but I've also used dipoles and vertical antennas. This is the typical end-fed half-wave that I do use. I did build this. It is based on the KM4 ACK end-fed half-wave antenna kit, and there are tons of other end-fed half-wave antenna kits out there. You can just design it yourself, or you can buy a kit and build it. A quick tip from what I learned on building my first end-fed half-wave antenna, it's a little cheaper to buy a kit than what it is to buy the components and build it yourself. The main reason I like to use an end-fed half-wave antenna is because I can just change bands without having to mess with the antenna, take it down, or readjust the vertical, anything. If I want to change a band, I just change the band on the radio and I'm good to go, no tuning required. What helps me a lot with the end-fed half-wave antenna is that I live in an area that has tons of really tall trees. So I don't necessarily need an antenna mast either. I can just throw a line up in the tree and hoist up my antenna. If you're not sure on how to get an antenna up in the tree, I'll link a video up here in the corner, and I'll link that same video in the description so you can go check it out. It covers getting an antenna up in a tree with an arborist throw line. Now moving on to coax, I typically only bring a 25-foot coil this coil of RG316. As you can see, it's nice thin coax, weighs nothing, and takes up almost no space. When I started doing POTA, I started out with this. This is a 25-foot roll of RG8X. And as you can see, it takes up a ton of space and it's pretty heavy. I only started with that because that's what I had. It was easy to get, it was cheap. There was a local CB shop close to where I live, and that's where I went to go get it. Now I can tell you, it didn't take very many activations to figure out what I was doing wrong with my coax and go out and buy some RG316. Even though RG316 does have quite a bit of loss to it, at the lengths that we typically run for POTA, about 25 feet or less, it really doesn't matter. Now, if you're running a dipole antenna, you may want a little bit longer length of coax than 25 feet. You may want a 50-foot length of coax. That way, you have plenty of room for your coax to go from in the air to the ground and over to your operating position. And even running RG316 at 50 feet with HF frequencies, you're still not going to get much loss. So now you're all set to go run a pileup like it's field day. Just a second. How are you going to log those contacts? I recommend using the Hammers app. You can use it on a laptop, which is what I do, or a smartphone, which is what I occasionally do, or you can run it on a tablet. It works on pretty well any operating system out there. I'll throw a link to it down in the description. I've tried using the paper method, and I've also tried using other apps, and this by far is the easiest app to log contacts for POTA. Another great feature of the app is you can export straight from the app to a file and then upload that file straight to the POTA website. Another option for logging that you have is running a paper log. Well, tons of people still do this, especially for CW. It lightens up the load. You don't have to carry any kind of extra electronics with you. You don't have to worry about battery life. You just need a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper or a notebook. Works just fine. Done it several times. I don't really like it. I like technology. Now you might think you're all set to get out and go do a POTA activation. Just a second. There's still another piece of information that you need. And that piece of information that you need is your POTA park number. Now you can do it the K8 MRD way and end up in a no cell service situation and ask one of your hunters to give you the park number and get you spotted. That works. I don't really recommend it. To get your POTA park number and to make sure that the park that you want to go to is in the POTA system, you got to head on over to the website. It's pota.app. And I'm going to link that down in the description too. When you get to the website, you're going to see this page. It's going to come right up to the spotting page. And in the upper left-hand corner is a hamburger menu. Click that menu, select map. Then at the top of the map, select your DX entity. If you're in the US, it's going to be US. If you're somewhere else, select that country. Then select your state, or if you're in another country, whatever that selection changes to. You'll see the map populate in an area. You'll have a ton of yellow dots. Each of those dots represents a park that is within the POTA system. And just for reference, the only parks that can be in the system are state or federally run parks, wildlife areas, forest, or trails. Now click and drag the map to around your current location or whatever the location is that you want to go to. If there's a yellow dot in that area, click on it, and that'll pop up a little bit of info about the park name and the park number. Now, if you want to know a little bit more, select more info, and that'll show you everything about the park. And one of the more useful things on this screen is a link to the website for the park. You can click that link, and this is where you can find the park maps and any other info about the park, including if you need a permit, if there's an entry fee, or if it's closed. Now, going back to the POTA website, the other useful information on this screen is the leaderboard at the bottom. You can see who has the most activations and the most QSOs. And maybe you might be able to use this to drum up a little friendly competition with some fellow hams, especially if you knock the number 1 out of the number 1 spot. Now there's a little caveat to where these yellow dots are. That's not necessarily exactly the spot that you need to be in. Some of the trails and other federal wildlife areas, they do span multiple states. So you will need to refer to park maps to see kind of where areas might overlap and where they are within your state, and to make sure that you're in the area so you can do your POTA activation. Now take all this info, go pack a bag or a tote or whatever, throw your radio gear and an antenna in your vehicle. Get out there and activate some parks. There's nothing more fun than running a pileup while you're out enjoying nature. Most of these parks have some nice hiking trails, so get out, get active, and activate a park. If you like this kind of content or have any suggestions, drop them down in the comments. Also, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Every little bit helps. As always, I will throw links to everything that I've covered in the video, and maybe a few extra links for some gear. Over here is an activation video I think you might actually enjoy. Go check it out. Thanks for watching. 73.